Welcome to Revit 2019 Demo 17. This demo is going to consist of creating a site plan in Revit. So we're going to open up the previous demo 16 to get started. We're going to initially start by creating a site. And out of the box, Revit essentially gives you a site down here in the browser. So we can go down to Site. We're going to hide these view elevations using VH, or elevation views. And then up top here we have a massing and site component as well. You'll notice this blue project base point, and we'll also VH that for now as well. And then under that's a survey point, which will also VH. So those are view hidden. And then under massing and site in the ribbon, we're going to go to property line, which is this one right here. And we're going to create by entering distances and bearings. So we're going to click on that. The first distance we're going to enter is going to be the south distance, and it's going to be 75 foot 6 inches with a 60-degree bearing. Bearing west with a line type radius R. Alright, so then we're going to create the next one, which we're just going to hit insert, and we're going to type in 110 feet. And this is going to be also south. And the bearing is going to be 30 degrees. And it's going to be east. Line type, 0 and R. We're going to insert another one that is 63 feet. I'm tabbing. I want that to be north, 60 degrees, east, and line. And I'm going to add line to close. The last line should be about 110 feet north, 233101 west. And you can see that on this black bar once it's set to close. If that looks correct, then you've entered the distances correctly. So we're going to hit OK. And then you'll notice that I can place this on the drawing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click somewhere about here to place it, so that I've got roughly that right edge, left back edge, and front left edge just barely hovering around that property line. So we're going to kind of go like that. And so I just clicked in white space to place it on the drawing, and it's there. Once I've done that, there's a dilemma of the site not aligning with the floor plan and building model. And so what we can do is we can actually rotate the project to true north. And so we can select the site plan in the project browser, and you'll notice that the house is not lined up the way we want to fit effectively on the lot. If we rotate the house, all the views will adjust and our views will be majorly messed up. So saving work then shows effects on the save work then shows effects on floor plan and elevations when rotating, and we want to undo that mess. So the solution is to select the site plan in the project browser, to go to the properties, and to set to true north. So we're going to set this orientation to true north and hit apply. Nothing happens quite yet, but something is happening because now we're setting it to true north. Now we're going to go to manage, project location. We're going to look for project location, which is right here. And we're going to go to position, and we're going to rotate true north. So we're going to rotate true north, and we want to rotate it 30 degrees counterclockwise. So we're going to go 30 degrees counterclockwise. And what you'll notice is that only the floor plan and the roof, or in this case there is no roof, but only the floor plan moved. It's just the way that this view is sliced right now. That's why you can't see it. And now we want to move that property line to a decent location. So we're going to just say like right here looks good. Now if we look at the floor plan level 1, we notice that our building hasn't moved. So everything's in a nice position. It's nicely laid out. My property plan's there. The only place that it's adjusted, and my elevations are still intact, the only place that it's actually adjusted is the floor plan on the site plan. So project north floor plan, if we set project north, hit apply, Now it's organized correctly. So now my project is to the north. So this is north facing now. True north is shown where north is truly this way. So that's the difference between a floor plan, which is set to project north. Notice it's set to project north. And site plan is set to true north. So that's the difference between the two. So we're going to place a north arrow on the site plan. So we're going to go to site plan. So we're in site plan. And we want to go to annotate from the site plan, symbol, and we're going to look for north arrow. And you're given this north arrow too. So we're going to place that. And you'll notice, I have thin lines turned on, that the actual north is going that way. So if I go to level 1 and place that symbol, it's also going to show up that way. That's because this arrow, or this north arrow, does not update to floor plan 1. So what I could do is I can pick the north arrow from this view, and I can clipboard copy it. So I can copy it, and I can paste aligned to a selected view of floor plan level 1. And if I go to level 1, it's now aligned correctly. So now I have the north arrow in the right spot. So this is important because a lot of people make mistakes and they'll place a north arrow in this view and it just doesn't work out. So now we have an accurate north arrow. All plan views should show a north arrow. All plan views. So you're going to basically just load this north arrow for now. Now we want to create the topography. So to do that, we're going to begin by going up to massing and site. And then we're going to go to the topo surface, which is this button here. And so we actually didn't go to site plan yet. So if we hit X and go back to site, we now want to hit topo surface. And under topo surface, we now have the place point icon right here. So we're going to set the elevation to -10 feet. And we're going to pick the top left corner, which in this case is going to be this one. We're going to go and set the elevation to 3 inches. And we're going to pick the top right corner. One thing to note, make sure you don't make the mistake that I just made. I set this to 10 feet. This needs to be 10 inches. So you'll know once we finish the topography whether or not you made that mistake, because there will be drastic slopes set up that way. But let's go ahead and continue on. We're going to set the next one to -2 feet, 3 inches. And we're going to pick the bottom right corner. Notice it's starting to draw the topography. And then the bottom left, we're going to set to -2 feet, 6 inches. And we'll pick this bottom left. Now, once you've selected those, we're going to hit the green check. And then we're going to hit SD. So we're going to hit escape twice, SD. And now we have a shaded site. And then HL goes back to hidden line. So you can switch between shaded and hidden. I'm going to move this up here just for now. And now we're going to add a property line annotation with bearings and lengths. So we're going to go up to annotate. Under annotate, we want to tag by category. And we want to touch the property line. Notice that it says no tag is loaded. Do you want to load a tag now? We're going to say yes. From here, it loads us to the U.S. Imperial Library. We want to go to Annotations, Civil, and under Civil, you'll find the property line tag. Property line tag. And then we're going to hit Open. We're going to uncheck Leader up here, and we're going to highlight and begin placing our tags. So we're going to place a tag here, a tag here, tag here, and a tag here. And you'll notice that our bearing and our distances that we input are there. So it should give you the bearings and lengths that we put into the table. Now, what we can do from here with this tag, and we can explain what this tag is doing. So I can select this tag, which is a family, and we've discussed a little bit about what families are and how we inject them into projects. But if I come up here and edit the family, there's a series of labels in here. Now these labels are tied to parameters. So we have category parameters for property line segments. And we have north, south, and we have, let's see what this, if you want to see what a label is, you just hit edit label, the bearing. And then to the right, we have a couple, there's a series of nested tags here. So that's important to know. To figure out how many there are, you can highlight all of them and control click distance and hit filter. And there's a total of 6 labels here. Labels are incredibly powerful. And what these do is they're basically looking for some value. They're looking for a parameter that we've pre-assigned. In this case, distance is looking for distance. So I'm going to load this into the project again. And now that's what we're getting from the label. And you can see the edges of all those labels when I highlight over it. And you'll notice that that's just reading from our property lines as we tag it. One other thing you'll notice in the properties value is it'll give us a total square footage of the lot lines. So, or the total square footage of the lot calculated by the overall boundary. So that's super powerful because now we know that our lot size is 7,617 square feet. So from there, let's look at a door tag family. So if I go to level 1 and I go over to a door tag like this one, I'm going to edit this family, and you'll note that this label is looking for a mark value. So the mark value is read from the door property mark. So if I adjust this value to say 5, it's going to update that value. Now, in this particular case, a mark value is going to increment all the way up. So I could have door 1, door 2, door 3, door 4, door 5, depending on which doors I have selected. So if I create similar and place this door here, and I tag it TG, it's now 4. So as I place another one, create similar, it's going to be door 5. So it's auto incrementing the mark value as I place them. Now there's another value called a type mark, and that's what a window looks for, is a type mark value. So a type mark value, if we edit the window tag, you'll notice that this label references type mark. Now a type mark is associated to the type of window. So notice that I have 25 and 25. So those have similar type values, 1 and 1. So what it's reading is under the type properties, there's a value called type mark. So this allows you to really quantify what your labels are doing, whether or not you're incrementing doors or whether or not you want this value to be a type mark. We could technically change this label to a type mark rather than a standard mark, and that would give us the same effect as what windows are doing, to where now the type mark is clearly set to 9. So if I adjust this tag to, I'm clicking the floor below, that's why I haven't been able to directly select it. So you want to be aware of what you're selecting when you highlight over things in Revit, because if you don't, you'll select and move a grip rather than a tag. So in here, if I change this to 1, my num locks wasn't on. Make sure your number lock is on. 1, enter. You are changing a type parameter. This could affect many elements. Continue, yes, because we ultimately want to update all those marks. So now the doors are listed as 1. Now if I change this type, that tells me that this type of door is different than the other types. So that gives you a lot of power and a lot of control to adjust them. What I'm doing is I'm editing the family and putting mark back the way that it was, because for this particular example, that's the way I want to leave it. So just simply doing that and loading it back in is going to overwrite the values. So later we can create annotation tag families that will look for what you want. So if you're trying specifically to show a specific tag in a specific way, you could actually edit an annotation category, which is what these are under door tags. It's a door tag family. You can actually edit these and create them. So I'm going to close out of these families. I'm not going to save my changes. So I'm just going to close out of the windows of the tags that I had open. And that's a basic overview of just labels and what tags are doing and how they're looking for things. Now, what would happen to an annotation that you had rotated if you had rotated your site to make it work? So like, for example, if I had rotated an item under site, so if I adjusted this to say from true north to project north, notice that the label is followed along. So it actually follows where it's at. If I change it back to true north, it's going to update. So those are very valuable things. You can't, or you can rotate these, but because it's hosted, it's not going to allow you to change the positioning of it. So where it's at is where it's at. So just know that between true north and project north, based on when you're changing these values, it's going to update those labels. Now, we want to label our contour lines. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to Site in Browser, so Massing in Site, and we're going to go Label Contours. And from here, what we're going to do is we're going to make a line that passes through all contours. You should see contours labeled in 1 foot increments. So if I go from here to here, it's just going to label that contour. This is considered a contour line. Now I went from here to here, and it's at a slight angle rather than being perfectly vertical. And that's any line or any contour line on the site that this hits will be then labeled. So that's important to know. So let's take a look in 3D at what our site looks like. So we've modeled a 3-dimensional site. We're going to edit the surface, and you can adjust these values. I'm at -10 inches, -2 foot 6, -2 foot 3, and then 3 inches. So if this value down here, we'll do this one, on the front left was at -15 feet, and we hit OK, you'll notice that more contours are shown up and that our building is essentially floating at this point. We'll get into that a little bit more as we proceed forward, but I wanted to show an additional contour line that was being made as we're drawing these. So if I go back to site, you'll notice that because that line for labeling contours was drawn all the way past the site, it's going to update and automatically label those contours. Now, because I drew it twice, that's why it's showing up. You can actually move these along those contour lines. So I can move the contour line, and I could even copy this contour line, and it'll update at a specific interval of what those are. So I'm going to undo a couple times and undo back to getting our site to where it was, to where our building is no longer completely floating. It still is a little bit. You can see the slope of the site there. We'll get into that in a minute. And now let's say that we wanted 6-inch increments rather than 1 foot increments for the contour lines, which was what you could see when we had 2. It was drawing it out as 1 inch increments, or 1 foot increments rather than 6-inch increments. So what we could do is we can go to Massing in Site, Model Site, and we can adjust the increment value here. So we can adjust the increments to change based on what we've selected here. So this is your site settings control box, and we want to set the start to -5 feet. We went below 0 feet. So we're going to go -5 feet. Sorry, this is 10 feet. We want -5 feet at the start, and we want 6 inches here. And multiple values, Earth, -10 feet, degrees from north and south, degrees, minutes, seconds. So we're going to hit OK. And now it's going to label additional contour lines for us. So you'll see that there's additional values showing up now for those contour lines. So now we want to place elevation marks. So we're going to hit annotate. We're going to go to spot elevation. We're going to go to properties and choose target project, which is what we're on. We're going to uncheck leader, and we're going to place it on the drawing. So I'm going to place it here, and you'll notice as I click, you'll see which corners that, or which side that it's going to be placed on. So I'm going to select this side. I'm going to place it here. It's calling out that 3-inch value that we had initially laid out when we built our site plan or our topography. So now all of those are there. So the spot elevation over the topo will tell us the exact height of where that topo is, or the top of a building corner, or the base of in relationship of those contour lines. So that's super powerful. The tag is looking for the value along that topography. Now we're going to get into marking up and dividing up a topo surface. So you may need to create a driveway, a patio, or other entity that breaks up the topo surface or changes the material of the topo surface. In the event of this, we will do what are called subregions, and we will spray paint essentially what we want on the topography. A split surface changes the physical topography, so it'll actually adjust values to actually change what the topography is doing. So we're going to go to site in the browser. So we're on site. We're going to hit SD, and you'll notice that there's brown dirt, which is the site. And we're going to go up to massing and site, and we're going to select topo surface. Sorry, split surface. We want to go to split surface. And then from split surface, we're going to select the topography or the topo surface anywhere. And you'll notice it highlights and it's looking for that selection. And also note down here on the bottom left, when you're in a command, it gives you a hint. And it'll tell you select a surface to split. So if you're ever confused on whether or not you're in a command or out of a command, or what the command wants you to do, you can read this dialog down at the bottom left, and it will actually tell you what to do. So in this case, it says select a surface to split. So we're going to select this, and it goes into a kind of grayed out mode, and we can begin drawing lines similar to how we draw roofs or walls or floors or ceilings. Very similar with the same draw mode. And what we're going to do is we're going to use lines, arcs, etc. to create a shape that's a closed loop on the topography. So let's go ahead and create like a berm or an area of dirt that we could put a tree potentially, or an area of grass maybe. Better yet, let's do some grass. So we'll do a little circular pad of grass. And so I'm going to hit finish. And once the surface has been split, you can see that I have two different areas. So now I could technically select this, and I could delete that area and remove it altogether, or I could create my own and adjust values for this surface now, because now what it's done is, let me slow down for a second here. If I select this and edit that surface, it now shows different points. And so I can actually set these heights at lower elevations. So if I have, like, say, a wall, I could create a foundation or a retaining wall, and I could lower this site to be lower than the retaining wall. So it's a really powerful tool. Now, what we can do is simply change the material rather than changing those values. So we're going to just go ahead and type in grass. And that's not a valid material, so I believe it's site space dash space grass. Nope, it's not. So we're going to hit dot dot dot. And if I scroll down, I don't see grass. Let's search grass. There's some grass. So what we could do is load grass in. So it is grass. We could say use the rendering appearance. We can adjust the color if we wanted to. So if we didn't want to use the rendering appearance, we could change it. That's a bit dark, so let's go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and adjust it down to a lighter green. Hit apply OK. And now you've got a small circular pad of grass. So when we adjust each corner, let's say instead of this, we wanted to redraw the grass. What we could do is we could come up to massing in site and we can merge surfaces, and we can merge this to this, and now our surface has been merged. So if you make a mistake, that's a really good way of getting the surface to adjust. Another way we could do this is split the surface and do a rectangle. And from here, if I did like a pad of grass similar to that, hit finish, I can now set this to grass because I've applied that material already. Hit enter. There's the material. I can edit that surface by selecting it, and I can adjust the corners. So I could set this to -1'6", and I could adjust this one to -1'6", and I could adjust these to -5 feet if I wanted to. And you'll notice if I go, once I've modified and finished, I can hit View 3D, and it's adjusted that value of that topography. So one thing that we can do now is, if that's something I don't want, I can merge the two surfaces again. So I can go back up to massing in site, merge surfaces, this to this, and now we're back with a clean slate. So that's important. Revit 2018 has a new look to the material library. So when I was typing in site space grass, that used to be the original way of loading in grass, and it was already preloaded. In this particular way of loading materials, you now have to, there's a new look to it. There's a whole new look. So pulling it in, grass has to be injected into those materials. So if we go to manage materials, it's similar to a past assignment that we had, but we could come in here and find, I don't see site, but I see miscellaneous. So like you see earth, hedge, I can actually pull these in. So that one was preloaded, but they took out grass. There's hedge, mulch, there's a lot of different materials that you can use. So that's important to note. So in this particular case, we picked grass. So if we go up to grass, or down to grass, I can adjust it to use the rendering appearance. Now, using the rendering appearance is important. Using just the shaded appearance isn't going to render that way. So even though it looks correct on the screen when it's shaded, it won't render directly that way. So one way to show this again is to go to massing in site, split surface. We're going to adjust and create a rectangle, hit finish. I want to adjust this to grass, and I just want to show you the difference between the rendered color and the shaded color. So if I come back up here and I adjust this to not be the shaded or not be the rendered appearance, I can adjust it to any color I want. It's important to know that it's not going to render that way. And one way to test it is to come down here to your view, and if you hit realistic, notice that same thing with the topography, it's tiled and it's showing actual grass. So that's something important to know. Now if we adjust this back to shaded, it's going to appear this way. So it's all dependent on how you're controlling what you see. So we discussed shading versus rendering. We looked at it in 3D. We want to talk about subregions now. So subregions are a little simpler. They simply change the surface material of the topo without physically changing it. It's kind of like spray painting the surface. So if I go to floor plan, site, right here, sorry, floor plans, site, and I select sub region, I can now create a concrete region that is resemblant of a driveway, and I can draw it line by line like this, and just come out roughly to the site, come across here. Notice I'm parallel to that line, and I can draw it out this way, back to here, and hit finish. And then I can adjust this to be concrete. We'll see if this one's loaded. Oops. You want to make sure that you have this selected and material placed. Concrete aggregate, sorry, concrete exposed aggregate. Enter. not a valid material. So we'll find that. We'll look for concrete. Concrete, we want exposed, which they may or may not have in my material library. They do. Okay, so concrete exposed aggregate, we're going to load that in. Hit apply. We're going to use the rendering appearance. Apply OK. And you'll notice that that's gray. So now if I go in here and I look at 3D, notice that the driveway is directly representative to what is happening on the topography. So rather than splitting the surface and adjusting heights, I am creating a subregion. Now what happened here is we have a flat piece of grass and wavy concrete. So this particular piece is completely flat. This particular piece is a subregion that is wavy concrete. So what surfaces should be subregions versus what surfaces should be split surface? I would say that anything that is on a site that's concrete could be a subregion, and anything that's being adjusted landscaping wise, or if there's a change in elevation, would be a split surface. So in this particular lecture, you have learned to create a site plan with a property line, topography, annotations, and materials. You learned that the site can't be rotated to position it to the building, but a view setting to true north solves the problem. So you're going to go ahead and save this file, save as, project, revit2019demo17, and hit save. And I'll see you in the next lecture.